All right, so my name is Anuj Karpatne, and today I'll be talking about a global surface water monitoring system that is able to map the dynamics of all major surface water bodies across the globe for the past 15 to 30 years, for which we have satellite data. Using this system, we are able to identify which water bodies are growing in size, which water bodies are shrinking in size. And from the perspective of computational sustainability, this is important for a number of reasons. It's important to devise water management policies. It's important to understand how climate change affects surface water dynamics, and it's important to assess the impact of human actions. So the problem of monitoring surface water can be framed as a classification problem, where we can use remote sensing data collected from these Earth orbiting satellites that capture a variety of information about the Earth's surface that are available as spatiotemporal raster grid datasets. One of these datasets is the multispectral reflectance values. Using this data, we can classify every location and at every time as either water or land. So given an input remote sensing data like this, we want to create as the output a binary classification map where the blue is water and green is land. And we have ground truth labels on specific dates that we can use to learn a classification model. However, there are a number of challenges in using existing supervised learning methods for creating a global scale classifier of water and land. The first major challenge is that water and land look very different in different parts of the world, in different geographic regions, and at different times, in different seasons, in different years. This heterogeneity of water and land in the remote sensing signals in space and time makes it difficult to learn a global scale classifier of water and land. Moreover, the water in some part of the world can look very similar to land in some other part of the world, making the problem even more complex. The second major challenge is that of poor data quality that comes with remote sensing data because of the presence of clouds, aerosols, precipitation, and so many other reasons. So as an illustration, we are looking at a lake in China, and whenever you see the green and the blue, that is water and land, land and water. And whenever you see the pink pixels, that represent missing values. So you can see that the dynamics, the real dynamics of the water is occluded by a high degree of missing values, which is difficult to handle using existing spatiotemporal smoothing approaches. These challenges have restricted the scope of existing water monitoring efforts to local and regional scales. And to overcome these challenges, we have been developing a series of computational advances to address them. And this slide just gives a very high-level overview of the method innovations. For more details, please stop by my poster. To handle heterogeneity, we have been exploring ensemble learning methods, where instead of learning one classifier to separate between all varieties of water and land, we can learn different classifiers for different types of water and land categories, and then select the set of these classifiers that are most relevant for a given test scenario. To handle poor data quality, we have been using the physics-driven elevation ordering of locations near the water bodies that can be used to impose constraints on the classification labels. For example, if A has been labeled as water and D has been labeled as land, then I know that's not physically consistent, and I can fix such errors. Using these computational advances, we have created a global surface water monitoring system which is publicly accessible on this link. And this reports the dynamics of all surface water bodies of a reasonable size, which are being shown in this map as blue dots. Now, each of these blue dots corresponds to a surface water body. As an example, we are looking at a reservoir in Mexico. And for each of these water bodies, I can look at the dynamics of the surface area of this water body across time. So this is being denoted as the number of pixels in this region classified as water. So in this time series, we can start to see some very interesting patterns of change. For example, in the first 3 years, there is a decline in the surface area, and then it increases, and then it goes up and down over time. Having constructed such time series for all water bodies, we can start to identify a variety of changes happening in surface water. So in this map, we have colored all the water bodies according to the type of change that it shows. Red dots in this image are regions where the water is increasing in size. So here is an example time series of a red dot. Green dots are where the water is shrinking in size. So here is an example time series of a green dot. And this is looking at the last 15 years, so starting from 2000 to 2015. So using this very simple taxonomy of red and green dots, we can start to see some very interesting patterns emerging. For example, here is a cluster of green dots. There are red dots all along the Amazon River. And we are able to see such patterns all across the world. Every such pattern has its own unique story that requires investigation. What I'll be doing in the remainder of this talk is to go through some of these patterns and show what's happening over there. So here is the first example of change in the Colorado River, and we are looking at two lakes, Lake Mead and Lake Powell. And all along the lake, we can see that we have green dots where the water is shrinking in size. To validate these findings, we can look at the Google annual time-lapse images of this region. And for this zoomed in region, we can see that, that this is the region where the water is actually decreasing in this imagery. So that's sort of visually verifying our results. And here is another example of Lake Powell, and we are able to see the dynamics in this particular water body. Here is another example of change in Tibet, where we see that all around this region in Tibet, this region is furrowed by red dots, which are regions where the water is increasing in size. Now, every red dot in this image is a glacial lake that is expanding in size because of the melting of glacials in these regions. So again, we can zoom in into any of these dots, and we can actually see the region of change around the water where the water has increased, and we can see that this is happening all over the water bodies in this region, and validate that using Google time-lapse imagery. So for example, if we look at this particular region, it gets completely submerged in 15 years. And if you look at the aggregate dynamics over the entire region, we can quantify about 7,000 to 8,000 square kilometers of area of increase in the surface water. And we are in the process of converting these area estimates to volume estimates using additional data. Another interesting change is on the river Ucayali in this particular portion of South America. And what we see is that we have red and green dots all along the river happening together. What this represents is that water is merely getting displaced from one region to another. To verify that, we can zoom into any of these regions and see this narrow river flowing all around it. And we have red dots and green dots all around it. And if you look at the Google time-lapse, we will be able to visually see the dynamics happening in the water. And here is another example of a different cross-section of the river. So there are many factors that affect river meandering. One of them is changes in the sediments. What this system enables is to quantify the intensity of river meandering that can be used for any such analysis. Here is another example of change that we have been extensively working on, which is construction of dams. So whenever a dam is constructed, there is a sudden inundation because of the creation of the reservoir, which shows up in the time series, the area time series, as a sudden increase. So one can devise a simple score to distinguish such changes from other natural changes. And if we put a threshold on the score, we can find candidate dam constructions. So we did exactly that and compared it with the state-of-the-art global product of dams, which is part of an international collaboration effort where different countries report their dam constructions. This data set reports 65 dams to be constructed after 2001. And using our remote sensing based approach, we are able to find 10 times more dams than what is reported by state-of-the-art products. And each one of these have been verified by our collaborators and a team of undergraduate students. And here is just a map to do a comparison in Brazil. So the black and the blue dots that you see in this image are what is reported by grant. All the other colors are what is missing and we are finding. So this just gives an example of the scale of the knowledge gap in existing collaboration efforts, and the promise in using remote sensing data to reduce them. So with that, I would like to conclude. There are a number of potential use cases of this data set. We can use it to quantify the available water stocks and risk, to map river dynamics, and a variety of other types of changes happening in surface water. And finally, we would like to integrate this with hydrological models to deepen our understanding of surface water. Thank you.